Welcome back to Law Wand, and in this video we'll be going through the general principles of contract law. Usually we assume that whenever two persons or entities agree on some terms or negotiations, a contract is formed. But this is not correct in all the situations, especially when the terms to which the parties are agreeing are illegal or not enforceable in the eyes of law. So, we can hereby say that mere agreement of the parties is not sufficient to enforce a contract. The Indian Contract Act of 1872, which is the primary law governing the contracts, states that when an agreement becomes enforceable by law, it becomes a contract. Great. But what criteria should we meet to make an agreement enforceable by law? Well, let's start digging into it. But first, let's quickly note those matters which do not come within the ambit of contracts. Some of them are gifts, statutory instruments, undertakings, affidavits, letters, and notices. Okay, now let's enter the world of contracts. In our day-to-day life, knowingly or unknowingly, we enter into numerous agreements or contracts. Did you know that you even enter into a contract when you buy a cup of hot tea from your favorite tea stall? You may now get a question about how's that possible. There is not even a single document transacting between you and the tea stall owner. Well, sorry to burst your bubble, because contracts can be either written, oral, or inferred from conduct. That means you will be usually entering into an oral contract when you buy a cup of tea. Moral of the story: a contract need not be in a written format only. However, when we come to the bigger business contracts where lots of matters would be at stake or where lots of money is involved, usually a written form of contract is preferred. Because I'm sure that all of you will agree that when compared to all other forms of contracts, a written contract is more reliable, and thereby we can reduce the disputes and other risks in the future. Sometimes the contracts, apart from being in the written form, may require attestation too. Well, that's an extra layer of protection or procedural requirement for validity of contracts. When speaking about all these matters, we need to know another point, which is about the difference between enforceability of contracts in a court of law and the validity of the contracts. On general grounds, these two terms are used interchangeably. However, there is a sensitive difference between the two. What is it? Well, you may have come across situations where you would be holding a contract whose clauses are all legal and it bears the signature of the parties. So say overall you're holding a legally valid contract, but still it is not considered fit to be accepted by the court. Why? Well, it's because though that contract would have consisted the legal clauses, along with them, it would have required to meet some additional procedural requirement like stamping or registration to consider it legally enforceable. For example, a partnership deed must be registered with Registrar of Companies. Here, the partnership deed is framed and entered into by the parties on valid grounds, which makes it legally valid. However, to make it enforceable, it has to go through one more procedure, which is registering it with the Registrar of Companies. Only then that partnership deed becomes both legal and enforceable. Now, what's the moral of this story? The moral of the story is whenever you enter into a contract, make sure that it is legally valid and enforceable. Means you have met all the procedural requirements. Well, we got an overall idea about the enforceability of contracts. Now, let's dig a bit deeper into the concept of a valid contract. Now, the question is, what are all the ingredients which are required to make a valid contract? The first ingredient is intention. To be precise, intention to create legal relationship. In the perspective of law, entering a contract is considered as a serious matter. So, it is not a surprise that the law expects the parties who enter into a contract mean it willingly. Now, that leads us to the intention of the parties. We should see whether they are entering into an agreement with an intention to create a legal relationship. For example, imagine a robber is pointing the gun at you. You may say things like, "If you spare me now, I will give you more money," or something like that. Now, will this dialogue of yours really create a binding obligation on you? Are you really bound to give more money to that robber after he releases you? The answer is no. In this situation, you didn't say that with any intention to create a legal relationship between you and that robber. Your only intention to say that was just to calm him down and to save your life at that moment. He is not rendering you any sort of service here. Because first of all, that robber doesn't have any right to threaten you. What he is doing is totally illegal. So, when there is no proper legal base for the contract to be constructed, how can subsequent matters related to it be established? Point to think about, right? I know the situation is not easy as it sounds. We can't even imagine our state when someone actually points a gun at us. But still, this is just to make you understand the concept properly, and I hope you understood. So, coming back to the example, we can analyze that you had to say that you are going to pay him more because of the threat and not out of your willingness. So, end note of the story. How to identify the intention? Remember that if a person expects to gain or obtain a real service and makes a promise on such expectation, then it is a sign that he has an intention to be legally bound. Easy, right? Well then, let's look at our second ingredient, which is offer. Under offer, there are different types like standing offer and continuing offer. But for now, let's only look at the offer just on general basis. Technically, do you know when the process of formation of a contract begins? Well, the answer is simple. The process of formation of a contract begins when one party makes an offer to another party.
Oh, great. But what actually is offer?
Offer is nothing but a proposal.
Wonderful. What is proposal now?
Well, when you put forward an offer or a proposal, you indirectly will be telling the other person that you are ready to do some work, or in some other situations not do some specific work, and you thereby will be seeking or asking the consent of the other person for that. And as I said in the previous point, a genuine interest must be there when you make the offer. To accept that offer or not, it is left to the decision of the other party. However, if that offer is accepted by the other party, it will create a legally binding effect on both of the parties. But if the consent couldn't be obtained, then the offer will be lapsed, because a contract cannot be enforced unilaterally. Means to constitute a contract, minimum 2 parties are required. Okay, now that leads us to the next ingredient for a valid contract, which is acceptance. In the previous point, we saw about when the contract begins, that is when the offer is made. Now, another question is, when is the formation of a contract said to be over? It is when the acceptance is communicated to the offerer. Like an offer, even the acceptance can be communicated through any common communication mediums like email, letter, telephone, face-to-face, and even through social medias like WhatsApp and Instagram. Do you remember about having spoken about the implied manner which too constitutes a contract? Well, both an offer and acceptance can be communicated through implied manner. A simple example. When you pick up some items from the store and hand them over to the cashier for billing purposes, it is an implied acceptance where it states that you are willing to buy their products for the price quoted on them. You may later bargain, that's secondary, but your initial act is enough to communicate your acceptance of their offer. So it is very crucial for you to be extra careful when adding clauses or terms and conditions or any other related matters in your contracts so that the chance of inferring or making assumptions would reduce. Next, we will see another strong ingredient for a valid contract, which is consensus of minds. Or you may say consensus ad idem or meeting of minds, all are same. It is a rule of contract law that the offerer and the offeree must agree on the same things on the same sense. Suppose if in a contract the offerer has stated that he is going to sell 5 boxes for 500 rupees and the offeree has stated that he is going to buy 10 such boxes for 500 rupees, then it is clear to us that the parties are not agreeing on the subject matter in the same sense. Both of them are having different views about the contracting terms. So it is evident that they do not have consensus of minds. If that is the case, then such a contract is not considered valid. So before entering into a contract, make sure that the terms to which both the parties are agreeing match. Now let us check out our last ingredient to make a valid contract, which is consideration. In simple terms, consideration is nothing but the promise. It is obvious that in a contract or in any business deal, both the parties promise each other about fulfilling some matters. These promises, which are legally termed as considerations, are the results of the interest of the contracting parties. For example, when you order your favorite food to home from your favorite restaurant, what is the consideration which the hotelier receives from you? The primary consideration which he receives is the money which you are going to pay. And what is your interest in it? I mean, what is the consideration which you are receiving from this contract? You get to taste your favorite food sitting at home and happily fill your stomach. That's the consideration which you are receiving. So overall, you will do a favor in return of another favor, or in other words, you involve in give and take policy. And if you want to sound more technical, you can term it as quid pro quo. Well, that was about the general principles of contract law. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something out of it. If so, please hit the like button, and for more such videos, do subscribe to Lawband. Do let me know about your views in the comment section, and you may even suggest me on the next topics which I need to take. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.